It's the third week of 2025. I'm Dave. I'm here with Andrew, and you're listening to BV Weekly. This week, we're mourning the loss of a legend, celebrating the return of Sugar, recovering from one emo fest in Vegas, and getting ready to attend another. We have a lot to talk about today, but I just wanted to let people know that we're presenting a showcase in Canada this November. BrooklynVegan and M for Montreal both recently celebrated 20th birthdays, and we've been collaborating on things for the majority of those years, usually with showcases at South by Southwest, and we used to do stuff together at CMJ. This year, BrooklynVegan is presenting a show as part of the actual M for Montreal Fest, which happens every year in November in, of course, Montreal, and featuring mostly Montreal or all Canadian bands. Our showcase takes place on Wednesday, November 19th. It's the first night of the fest. It's at, Foufoun's Electrique, a legendary Montreal club where Nirvana played their first Montreal show. And our lineup is wild, actually. I'm really excited about it. We have Annie-Claude Deschaines, I don't remember how you say her last name, from Duchess Says. We actually always used to do shows with M for Montreal too, that when we used to book Duchess Says when they were a band, and they were just always insane. One of the most fun live bands. Annie is doing more of a solo thing now. We also have on that bill punk bands Truck Violence and Piss, best name, and Shoegazers Ribbon Skirt. I promise you this will be one of the most fun events at this year's fest, so we hope to see you there. The whole M for Montreal schedule is out now, so go check that out. Now on to some sadder news.
Yeah, D'Angelo. I'm sure we all were absolutely shocked by this. So D'Angelo, the neo-soul legend, died at age 51 this week from a previously undisclosed, quote, prolonged battle with cancer. So obviously it's something that's been going on a while that we just didn't know about. It was especially shocking because Raphael Saadiq, one of his longtime collaborators, actually said last year that he had a new album coming. And I mean, I'm definitely wondering if enough of it is recorded that we might still hear it. But yeah, I mean, 51 is so young. I don't think nobody saw this coming. Obviously, I mean, D'Angelo has kind of had some struggles over the years. He's been an elusive artist, but yeah, this is super, super sad. Huge hit to music in general.
Yeah, it's honestly shocking. Came out of nowhere. Super bummed. I think he canceled some shows less than a year ago, but now we know probably why. And I mean, speaking of his shows, people are recounting now, just how amazing live. I was just reading a review of his Radio City show by what's his name, from the Village Voice, from like 25 years ago or something, and he was just talking about how transcendent, like the greatest show he's ever been at Radio City. Just known for his amazing live shows. Only 3 albums that, like you said, he's been kind of reclusive. And Brown Sugar from 1995, Voodoo came out in 2000, and Black Messiah in 2014. All like amazing, much loved albums.
Yeah, and like I think if it's not obvious in the present day how revolutionary D'Angelo was, I think you kind of have to consider what the world of R&B looked like when he put out Brown Sugar in 1995. Like, it was R&B in the 90s, it was very slick, very, like, the production was very sort of electronic geared. And then, I mean, the reason that they call D'Angelo neo soul is because he comes along and he sort of really takes like the kind of Curtis Mayfield, Marvin Gaye kind of thing and mixes it with what hip hop was doing at the time. And now, I mean, I think, again, if it doesn't sound so revolutionary now, it's because we've seen Frank Ocean do that. We've seen Beyonce and Justin Timberlake do that, both of whom paid tribute to D'Angelo. I mean, he just never got nearly as successful as megastars like them, but Beyonce called him the pioneer of neo soul and said that he changed and transformed rhythm and blues forever. Justin Timberlake reflected on hearing Brown Sugar for the first time. He said, he said something like that he had grown up like hearing sort of like gospel and soul and stuff, but he had never heard it sound so new the way it did when D'Angelo did it. And so again, like in the last 20, 25 years, I think we see a lot of like classic soul merge with electronic R&B and hip hop and stuff. But D'Angelo, along with like Erykah Badu and Lauryn Hill and some other artists, was really one of the first to do that. So you kind of have to consider just like how revolutionary it is when he does Brown Sugar. And then that record, I mean, I was a child when it came out, so I don't know exactly how sort of present it was in the mainstream, but I feel like it was probably, I think from what I understand, it was sort of his closest brush with like pop music and mainstream. But then he gets very elusive. He goes away for 5 years, only to resurface in 2000 with Voodoo, which is like a way crazier record. And it's got like really long songs, and it's more sort of like improvisational. And like, again, like people would compare it to like sort of cult icons of black music like George Clinton and Sly Stone, and like they would reference like the more ambient Miles Davis records or some of the more cultishly loved Marvin Gaye records. And I mean, and that was also, that record was made with this group, the Soulquarians, which D'Angelo helped co-found with Questlove and Jay Dilla. And it was like done in the same stretch. They did records like The Roots' Things Fall Apart, and Mos Def's Black on Both Sides, and Common's like Water for Chocolate, Erykah Badu's Mama's Gun. And it's just this whole like gold rush of this fusion of classic soul and at the time current hip hop. And it's just like really, really like a wild, wild record that just totally updated the most adventurous side of, I guess, like classic soul for the modern age. And you can definitely hear when you look at people like Justin Timberlake and Beyonce doing these sort of more adventurous records later in their career, you could totally hear the roots of, you can hear how Voodoo is kind of like the roots of that. I mean, Tyler, the Creator, another megastar, said Voodoo helped shape his musical DNA. So yeah, I mean, it's just like, I would say if I had to pick, that's my favorite D'Angelo record. It's just, it feels to me like especially wild for its time. And like, I don't want to say it like, it has elements that are dated to the early 2000s or late 90s when it was probably partially at least recorded, but it still sounds like totally futuristic and like nothing else. Even if you talk about who he's influenced, like it still sounds crazy now. Yeah. And then, I mean, talk about elusive, like it takes another 14 years for Black Messiah to come out. It drops in December, I think, like, which is always interesting because, half the music publications have their year-end lists published already. And then you get like one of the most anticipated albums. And then you get a lot of people rushing to quickly say, oh, this is of course one of the best of the year. But now it's been out for over a decade and it remains just as highly regarded as the first two. And again, like every record he's done is so uniquely different because at this point he kind of got more into like the kind of hard-edged guitar, like funk and rock. Like this one was especially compared to like Sly Stone and George Clinton, like, and it certainly sounded more directly like that stuff, I think. So I would almost, I mean, to me, I almost wonder, like, is Black Messiah not even neo soul, but more like neo funk? That's probably not a hot take or anything, but yeah, it's just, it was like, it transcended even the thing he helped invent. And so when we heard earlier this year or late last year from Raphael Sadiq that there is new D'Angelo, I mean, we can only assume that it's once again another reinvention, that it's got to be amazing because it's like he only pops up when it is amazing. So again, I really hope that we get to hear at least some of what that is, what that music he's working on or was working on is, what it sounds like, because I mean, otherwise we're just going to be left with an absolute legend and some unfinished business.
Definitely.
But yeah, rest in peace, D'Angelo. If you're listening to us talk about him and you haven't heard his music, just go listen to his music. Some of the best stuff. The amount of the massive impact that it had is just like, I mean, we outside of the ones I named already, like we saw tributes come in from Lauryn Hill, Missy Elliott, Doja Cat, Jill Scott, Flea, Nile Rodgers, Flavor Flav. I mean, his impact really is just everywhere. And I would imagine that if you have not heard D'Angelo, that you have heard music influenced by D'Angelo. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and like you said, Tyler, the Creator, pointed out that he shaped his musical DNA. Obviously, he also shaped Tyler's Odd Future bandmate Frank Ocean's musical DNA. I don't know if Frank has released a statement yet, but
I mean, he's certainly Frank's become about as elusive as D'Angelo. So
there you go.
yeah, I would bet money that Frank Ocean owns a copy of Voodoo or Brown Sugar somewhere. So
Speaking of Sugar,
oh yeah,
Sugar, the band, are back.
yeah. Also, kind of a legendary, impactful artist that they're I think
I know right now you're like, I can't believe he just did the speaking of on that one. Yeah, but go
no,
ahead.
it's. I mean, I thought it was kind of clever, but yes. But I think what comes to mind for me is that similar to D'Angelo, where you have megastars like Beyonce and Justin Timberlake talking about how they impacted them. I think of Sugar as one of those bands that so much mainstream music doesn't exist without. Yet Sugar themselves were never quite as big as a lot of the artists they influenced. So, needless to say, I'm very happy that they are back. They're reunited for the first time since the 90s because it's really great timing for them to come back. And so I kind of hope we get maybe, they get the second win they've always deserved.
Yeah, I think let's talk about a little bit on who Sugar are for those who are not acquainted.
Sure. So, Sugar is the band led by Bob Mould in the early 90s. And Bob Mould, before that, was one of the singers in Husker Du. And Husker Du, who should need no introduction either, but in case they do, um, I think you can't talk about the invention of alternative rock without talking about Husker Du. Like, they basically were one of the first bands to take hardcore punk and turn it into something a little bit slower and more melodic. And I mean, when Nirvana were blowing up in the early 90s, and interviewers, there's like a famous interview where somebody asks Nirvana like about how they come up with their original sound, something like that. And I believe it's Chris Novoselic who says, "Oh, we're just like copying Husker Du." So you have the biggest band in the world of the early 90s saying, "We're not doing anything Husker Du hasn't done already." Green Day are also like massively inspired by them. They cover that song, "I Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely," and it's like, even if they didn't, you could just listen to the original and be like, "Oh, this is like 25 Green Day songs." Um, so yeah, so many massive bands just that blew up in the 90s were really pulling from Husker Du. And then Husker Du did sign to a major towards the end of their career, but this was sort of still in the late 80s when alternative bands on major labels weren't really selling notable numbers. So they broke up, having never gotten too big, but of course being so important and loved. Bob Mould does some solo material, and then Nirvana blows up, and he actually then in turn gets inspired by seeing that. Like he sees like the massive impact of Nevermind, and I think like a light bulb goes off of like, oh, like I do that kind of stuff. So he puts together this trio called Sugar, and they do this record in 1992 called Copper Blue, and it just picks up where all the catchiest moments of Husker Du left off, and actually to sort of keep the I don't know what the word is, but like to keep the cycle going, the first Foo Fighters album is basically just a bunch of Sugar ripoffs, and Dave Grohl will tell you that. So it's like really interesting, I think, how it was just kind of this thing where they were influencing each other, and then of course Nirvana and Foo Fighters get a lot more successful. But anyway, so Sugar are just one of the most important indie rock or alternative rock bands of the 90s. Copper Blue is a classic record. Bob Mould actually performed it in full like in the early 2010s. And that was a big deal, but that was not with the other members of Sugar. So this is especially exciting that they are back. They're touring. There's a new song out. It's called House of Dead Memories. It's awesome. I mean, I will say, like, if you haven't been keeping up with the last, what is it now, maybe 5 or 6 Bob Mould solo records, they've all kind of sounded like Sugar. They've all been really good. And this new song definitely could just fit on one of those. So I imagine this song will get a lot more attention because of the narrative around it, but also like Bob Mould's been doing this for a while. So like, I do hope he's been doing it on a level that I think has been getting a little less attention than the Sugar reunion. So I'm just saying, shout out to those Bob Mould solo records. Yeah. Do check those out. They are very, very good.
I just counted. He's got 14 full lengths under solo records, and that doesn't even count EPs and live
Yeah, no, he
albums.
has a ton, and I forget. I need to look at his catalog again, but it was at some point in the past few years because he had been doing other types of music too, but the last few solo records sound like Sugar.
Yeah, including one that came out earlier this year.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out when they start doing interviews that this song, House of Dead Memories, was written in the same sessions as his last solo record.
Right.
And that's always interesting. It makes me think of when American football did LP2, and it's like, oh my God, like you're following a holy grail record with another album like 17 years later, but also like half the album was just written at the same time as Mike Kinsella's Owen album from the same year. So it's kind of like this funny thing where you're like, it's presented, not that they presented it this way, but it's being received as like, oh my God, how do you follow a holy grail from forever ago? But it's really was just being written in the same way as the other music that he's consistently written every couple years for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and similar here, I think. I would imagine.
My guess is Bob was never, against Sugar. Some reunions are like, oh, I didn't ever think it would happen. And I don't think Bob was like the kind of person who never would have brought Sugar back. I think it probably was just a good time for the other members. And so it's like a good opportunity now for that reunion to happen.
Yeah, you could say it was a good idea. Yeah, I agree. I'm sure that Bob's been open to it for a while, and Bob Mould live is like incredible, by the way. So I have no doubt that this reunion will be great. I mean, his shows are always a mix of his solo records, Sugar material, and Husker Du material. So it's like you can't beat it.
And he's constantly touring.
Constantly, yeah. So it is interesting where it's like this reunion is rare, but seeing Bob even play these songs is not necessarily rare. So it's sort of a interesting type of reunion, I guess. But
yeah, with this new song, remind me, did they say a new album is following?
To quote Malcolm Travis, he says, to get back to working together again with Bob and David is such a gift, and I'm looking forward to what the future has in store for us. So I don't see the word album, but it looks like there is a hint of more to come, and maybe, hopefully, that means album.
So meanwhile, they've announced 4 shows, 2 at New York City's Webster Hall and 2 at in London at O2 Forum Kentish Town. They're each in May. I have to imagine that more shows are to come, but that's what's happening so far. We're wondering, I mean, the shows haven't gone on sale yet by the time while we're recording, so wondering how quickly they'll sell out, if they'll add more, what's going to happen. Obviously, this band, every fest is going to want Sugar next year, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Riot Fest and Best Friends Forever. We'll talk more about that fest in a minute. And yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's a great time for Sugar to come back, yes?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like their influence is kind of everywhere, directly or indirectly. I mean, the most direct is Militarie Gun have been very vocal about Bob Mould's influence, both Sugar and Husker Du's influence, and obviously they continue to rise. Their new record is out today. They just did they cover Husker Du a lot, but they did a collab where Bob Mould joined them on stage, and I think that was a Sugar song, but someone listening will have to fact check that. Meanwhile, yeah, outside of that though, I mean, there's just so many bands doing like 90s alt rock revival right now. Like, I mean, anything from like Liquid Mike to Hotline TNT to Rocket to Wishy to Mama. Like, there's just so much kind of like doing that borderline between indie and alternative rock from the 90s. And it's like Sugar are one of the bands who invented it. And I feel like, I don't know for sure if the fans of the current 90s alt rock revival are tapped into Sugar like that, but they're back now, so it's like perfect timing. I mean, I can say from my experience, like again, like Sugar were broken up before I heard of them, but when I was kind of like going back through the canon of 90s indie rock and finding like Pavement and Dinosaur Jr. and Sebado and Guided by Voices and Built to Spill, like Sugar were right there with all that stuff. And my perspective, and who knows, and I'm kind of probably basing this on anecdotal evidence, I feel like Sugar get talked about a little bit less than pretty much everyone I just named. So I'm kind of curious to see if it's true that maybe Sugar have kind of like faded from like the conversation, so to speak, and if this reunion will kind of like have a lot of people diving back into those early records and kind of having big moments with them. Because I mean, that's something that happens. Like, it's like every generation has like the older artists that kind of get that second win. Like, I never would have predicted that Hum would be what they are now, for example. So I think it'll be really interesting to see like if this reunion kind of gives like, is it going to be a bunch of people going to see Sugar who either haven't seen them since they were last around or maybe like caught the tail end kind of thing? Or are we going to see like a lot of younger people in the audience? I think it'll be interesting to find out.
I'm definitely going to try to make one of those Webster Hall shows. And yeah, so it's exciting. And I think we said last week, will 2026 be the year we are able to see both Sugar and Sonic Youth? Well, now 50% of that is true.
Yeah. And one last push for anyone who's not sure if they should go see him. Bill from Brooklyn Vegan says that Sugar in 1992 is a top 10 loudest show of all time for him. So reason enough.
Which reminds me, will 2026 be the year that we can once again also see My Bloody Valentine?
I mean, we know it is. We know it is.
Oh, actually, we know it is. Right. They were announced on Primavera already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So more shows are still to come. So yeah, it's going to be a loud year.
Yeah. I bet Primavera is kicking themselves for not having Sugar. But yeah, I'm actually wondering, will Sugar play or even headline Best Friends Forever Festival?
It would be well, okay. Headline, I don't know. We'll see how fast those Webster Hall shows sell out. I just got back from Best Friends Forever a few days ago. And so it's a good time to talk a little bit about that, where bands we wondered if they would headline. Texas is a Reason headline Best Friends Forever. They did not quote headline, but they were kind of like that. Right under the headliner, exciting reunion slot. I could see Sugar being that. This year's headliners, the bands who were technically at the top of the flyer were Jimmy Eat World, Jawbreaker, and help me out.
I don't remember. Minus the Bear.
Jimmy. Oh yeah, Minus the Bear. Yes, thank you. Not remembering who is the headliner is it's that kind of fest, because really, in my mind, there's no difference between Minus the Bear and Rilo Kiley in terms of like popularity of bands. And Rilo Kiley.
Well, back up for a second, just in case anyone listening doesn't know why we think Sugar would play. But what is Best Friends Forever Festival? Just in case, it's only on its second year. What's sort of tell us the premise?
All right. Well, a few years ago, When We Were Young launched a festival called When We Were Young, launched in Las Vegas, which is an emo nostalgia festival. And it's the kind of emo that festival that's headlined by My Chemical Romance every year. Whereas, so Best Friends Forever suddenly 2 years ago started. And that was kind of like the indier answer to When We Were Young, happening a week earlier, with the more emo bands who could also be called indie rock, the ones who influenced the bands playing When We Were Young.
More 90s centric, less early 2000s centric.
There you go. And so Best Friends Forever just happened for the second year this year. I went both years. And it's as we talked about multiple times, there's a lot of music on there that you could just call indie rock, especially this year. Most notably Wednesday, who, no offense to emo, actually ended up playing maybe my favorite set of the entire festival. Wednesday are just released their amazing new album. There's some screamy stuff on that album, and I think as you predicted, maybe they would lean into that screamy stuff since it's the punk emo festival, and they definitely did that. And it worked for the entire crowd. I don't know how many people there were just learning about Wednesday or have already been listening a lot to the new album, like myself and the friends I was with. But either way, they played a very crowd-pleasing, very screamy set, including, I don't know how this fits in, but Carly announced special for this fest. I she said, I grew up as like a Hot Topic kid, like kind of that, and that the story started to make you wonder. Wait, does she realize this is best friends forever and not when we were young? And then she's like, and my bandmates, they were like, I don't really think this is a good idea, but I told them, no, trust me, people will love it. And they then went into a cover of Flyleafs. Help me out with the
I don't know
song
what it's
name.
called.
No, well, a lot of people do know the song. It's definitely a really popular Flyleaf song. Actually, recorded the whole thing, of course, and posted the video on Brooklyn Vegan's Instagram. You can find it there. But yeah, I mean, I do think about half the crowd, at least half the crowd, were probably like, I have no idea what this is. She didn't say what it was. You had to know. And then there's like half the crowd who like instantly knew exactly what song she was covering. I was the half that had no idea. But yeah, so I don't know. We could analyze that song selection all day. I don't know if you call it emo.
I never saw Flyleaf as emo, but
No.
I do think she said Hot Topic kid. I mean, I guess I could see how it's Hot Topic music. It fits in with all that, So like, I think it makes sense to me that like, if you kind of came of age in the 2000s, that would be part of your gateway to how you end up at Best Friends Forever Festival in 2025.
Right. And I think she mentioned it, like seeing it on MTV a lot. So anyway, it was fun, regardless of the narrative. It was also a screamy cover, and they were just loud. Speaking of loud, I think Wednesday was the loudest band at the festival, and they sounded just amazing. They were small. They were on the small stage, which was maybe a little confusing. They definitely seemed bigger than some of the bands that played on the big stage. Anyway, they played right before Rilo Kiley. Carly said on stage that she'd be running over there like the rest of us to catch Rilo Kiley immediately after their set. And it was just, it was amazing. And I'm going to run down the other bands that I really loved at BFF. There were a lot of them. I mean, there were so many runner-ups, great sets by Penfold, Pity Sex. A lot of the excitement for me is at any festival really is, you're seeing so many bands in a short amount of time. And especially at this fest, you're seeing so many reunited bands in a short amount of time. So it's like just checking off those boxes. So I don't want to say like, Oakwood, that's a band who I've never thought about before, but are back and have this, like in the past 10 years, a emo band, their legend has grown, one of those stories, and they're selling out all the shows on their tour. And I got to see them. I probably wouldn't have gotten to see them, and they were great. And Jay Robbins brought back Burning Airlines, his post Jawbox band, which by the way, are also opening for Texas is the Reason Webster Hall show coming up in New York City. I found out why it's called Jay Robbins Does Burning Airlines. Unlike some of the other reunited bands on the lineup who don't have all their members, it's only 2/3 of the original Burning Airlines lineup, with Brooks from War on Women filling in the third slot. And so he didn't feel comfortable calling it just Burning Airlines. So he called it.
It's like what Bob Mould did Copper Blue.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little confusing though, because it's 2 original members of Burning Airlines and the other guy's name is not in the title. But anyway, they sounded great. Speedy Ortiz, I had not seen in forever, sounded great. Pedro the Lion, always loved Pedro the Lion. It was great to see them again. Tiger's Jaw, who's like not really my band, but I'm at least interested in, especially considering how much we cover them on Brooklyn Vegan. It's great to see them. Pity Sex are back. Had not seen them probably since like some long ago CMJ show or South by Southwest show we had them on. And like they've, been kind of, they're a much quieter kind of music. But they even played Sound and Fury. And so then, I got to see them here. So, and like runners up for my 10th place, Jimmy Eat World, who played, you talk about what Jimmy Eat World played, because even though I saw them, a lot more about
they
their
played
set.
10 songs from Clarity, which is like the most Clarity filled set they've done since they did the anniversary tour for Clarity. which I think that,
Yeah, I mean, it brought me right back to seeing them in like a basement. Actually, I never saw them in a basement, but that
Mhm.
was the vibe of like that even it brought playing this fest
Yeah,
brought them
yeah.
back to playing in basements. They actually
I'm
said,
not gonna lie, like just because they have done two Clarity tours, I thought playing like the deep cut '90s emo fest that maybe they would do like Static Prevails because they play a few songs from that record. They played two when you saw them, but like you never. I don't think they've ever done like a reunion tour, an anniversary tour for it. So I was kind of hoping they'd go that deep, but still amazing to see them do most of Clarity, couple Static Prevail songs. They did No Sensitivity, which is everybody at that festival knows how important of a non-album cut that one is. So that was really cool. And then like two hits from Bleed American, which fine, you got to do them. Yeah,
well, they closed. Yeah, he's
yeah.
got to do them. Everybody was, trust
Oh,
me, the
I'm not.
crowd was
I
very
love that
happy. They
album. I mean,
did.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I actually hate the way I said that, like as if it would be negative. No, I mean, I would have loved to have heard
no,
all of Bleed American. But I do think in context, hitting 10 songs from Clarity, it feels very, very special that they did that at this particular festival because Jimmy Eat World has spent this year. They played Coachella where I saw them. They played Furnace Fest. I think they did one of like those hard rock, heavy metal, like Danny Wimmer festivals. So they've been like hitting like all these different types of audiences at different like festivals and genre based festivals. So to come to like the OG '90s emo fest and play almost all of one of the best '90s emo records to have ever been released, very cool, very special moment that you got to experience.
yeah, and he talked through that. He said, oh, many people I'm running into at this festival that helped me carry a speaker, an amp up the steps or down the steps into a basement. And he said something like, these songs we don't play a lot, but you all
Hmm.
get us. Like the "you all get us" line, especially stuck with me. Like he almost admitting, like we do a little more of a sellouty thing usually to
That's
appease
not
the
even
crowd.
fair to
But
say though, because it's like, yeah,
okay, that's a
no, like
negative
I
word, but
mean, it's because that it's like I actually, if anything, Jimmy Eat World have such a vast catalog of very good albums, very good to essential. I guess that is what they range from. That like if you're following them at this point, if you know the words to anything besides the couple hits from the early mid 2000s, like you're a Jimmy Eat World fan. I feel like they're past the point of like the casual fan and they're just like if any song that they play that isn't the middle or sweetness or pain, if you know the words, you're a fan, I think. So anyway, yeah.
okay. Well, and they did play the before they played the two hits at the end. They did say something like something like, "Okay, now it's time
Hmm.
to party." Like there was the
Right.
clear, and then they did the two hits. And one of them being the middle, which was just on Rolling Stone's top 250 songs of
Hmm.
this century. Also, that was only one of two songs played at this festival that were on that Rolling Stones list. The other was by a band who I am calling my third favorite set of the fest, which was Rilo Kiley, who what's it called? Portions for Foxes. They did close their set with that amazing show. Rilo, also, I want to shout out Rilo Kiley's visuals. They did the like what Nine Inch Nails and Turnstile, a version of what Nine Inch Nails and Turnstile did, which was live video on the screen
Hmm.
behind them. They had like camera on the stage. They were like a lot of times it was just on Jenny's legs, even, which was just giant legs on the screen behind them. And or sometimes Jenny would go down on the ground and put her face into the camera. So it was just like giant Jenny's face on the screen behind. But oh, just so good. So I've said this before, I missed Rilo Kiley's New York City shows and when they just came through on this reunion tour. And I'm so glad I got the chance to now see them for the first time in like 20 years at Best Friends Forever.
Awesome.
So I've said my number one and my number three.
Yeah. Who else is on your top 10?
My number two is kind of more unexpected. It was another reunion that I was super mad when they toured through that I missed, and it was Elliot. In the history of me, it's almost random that I just love Elliot so much with that. I really, have had moments in the past with their albums. And so it's almost like nostalgic now when I listen back to the album. And then they just amazing live. So I think that's, Mineral also in my top 5, but like I wondered if Mineral would be number 1 because I feel like the same way, like hearing those Mineral songs live, but just the way Elliot brought it to another level. And maybe I personally probably like the Elliot albums a little more. So yeah, but Mineral's still in my top 5. One thing about Mineral is there's actually, speaking of bands that missing a member, much to a lot of people surprised, there were only 3 of the 4 original Mineral members up there. And I heard through the grapevine that the 4th member, guitarist, was sick. And they played 4 shows. They announced that they're going to play their final show at Best Friends Forever. Then they added a Best Friends Forever pre-show, which happened the Thursday night before the fest, which only people who bought like a special VIP pass could also go to. And then before the fest, they played 2 shows in their hometown of Austin. And so for all 4 of those shows, they did not have the one of the members so they got a fill-in guy last minute. And yeah, anyway, Mineral, super special, great. And my number 4 though is Bear vs. Shark, because they are also on the main stage, and they just, they were playing Terrorhawk, their album from 20 years ago, and that is a high energy, fun band, and they still bring it insane. And I'll say, the main stage is a huge festival stage with a big barrier photo pit, and then plus they separate VIP on the right and hoi polloi on the left. That's like, a lot of fests do this now. It's like, and in order to do that, they have like a huge barrier space that goes all the way back through the middle of the crowd. So you have like a crowd the band's on this huge stage. They're looking out. The people are like 10 feet back from them. They're way high up. And then also there's like 2 separate crowds separated in the middle by this huge like walkway. And so to be a lot of bands then try to engage the audience the best they can. And there were a bunch of bands this year and last year who go into the crowd and try to engage. Sometimes you're just like leaning over the barrier with your mic, or you actually jump into the crowd. But it's tough to have like that crowd interaction at a, not a club show like this. Bear vs. Shark were the masters of actually getting the crowd engaged, and they were running all over the place. Not to keep shouting out our Instagram, but go check out the Instagram reel I posted of a lot of those crazy moments. And I'll just quickly run down. I mean, Cursive played 2 sets. On Friday, they played Domestica and then surprised us by then also playing the EP that came after that, Burst and Bloom, in full. That day's set, my friend Joey, who we went to, that was his number 1 set of the weekend. But then, bonus, Cursive also played 2 days on day 3 of the fest. They played the Ugly Organ plus more songs too in full. And during that was the same day Rilo Kiley played. They brought out Jenny Lewis, who played on the Ugly Organ. She sings on there, and she actually then performed with them the song The Recluse live. So that was also one of the most exciting moments. And Cursive just sounded amazing, just next level. I mean, there's bands who I won't name who were nowhere near as rehearsed and just tight and great as Cursive, playing just great classic albums. Much newer band at number 7 is February. I could honestly put them a lot higher too, but they can't compete with like the classic time-tested material of some of the bands I just mentioned. But February, Vegas hometown show, screamo band, who are kind of, I've used this term before. I'm saying like they seem like the chosen screamo band right now because they just played Sound and Fury. They've been announced on Coachella, and they were at the emo fest Best Friends Forever. They're definitely a very rising band, and this was the first time I saw them. I had low expectations. I saw some video from Sound and Fury, and I was like, oh, I don't know if this translated that well. They blew me and everyone I was away at Best Friends Forever. And if they come to New York, I definitely want to see them again.
I would wager that screamo fares a little better at a second wave emo festival than a hardcore festival. Also, for what it's worth.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But it's just that kind of thing of like seeing screamo up on a stage separated by a barrier.
It's great.
In the daytime, early. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were amazing. Go see them. February, spelled wrong. Febuary. That's how they spell their name. Um, Band
I've
to
spelled their
watch,
name so
definitely.
many
And
times that now my autocorrect will think I'm spelling the actual word wrong.
yeah, this band is definitely bad for editors,
Yeah.
writers like ourselves who constantly have to worry about spelling
Ugh.
things correctly.
That would be like a fun like top 10 most annoying misspelled bands for like autocorrect and spell check reasons. Like what is that 90s
Yes.
metal band with like I can't, it's one of like the mellow death bands where they have like an extra L or something. Anyway, go on with your list. Sorry.
Yeah. A number 8, Texas is the Reason. Again, I'm ranking these, but they're all just really special. Another band without the original fourth member, Norman Brannon, is not partaking in this reunion, but Texas sounded really great. And it's just unbelievable. I mean, so Elliot, Rilo Kiley, Mineral, Bear vs. Shark, Curse of Playing 2 classic albums, Texas is the Reason, all on this list. Like, it's just, yeah, it was one special moment after the other. And number 9, though, was kind of an unexpected one for me because I hadn't seen them forever. And I don't know, I hadn't listened to them in a long time either. But it's a band who I've always been around and we've always liked. And I just guess over time, I kind of forgot that what they specifically sounded like. But the Appleseed Cast. So I'm putting them at number 9 just because of how I've been listening to Appleseed Cast nonstop since the fest. They did that to me. There's bands like Oakwood, who I mentioned earlier. I'm like, that's cool. That's like this special thing happening. It interests me as a music nerd. But like, I'm not motivated to go now listen to Oakwood. Maybe it's just not my exact thing. But like the Appleseed Cast reminded me that they are my exact thing. And they were much heavier than I expected. The post-rock side of them, just like super sounding great. And so like Appleseed Casts are now high on my list of bands I care about again. Other bands tied for number 10, Numb Ears, spelled Knumears.
That's how you pronounce it? I've been wondering.
That is, and
Numb
it's
ears?
Numb
Numb
Ears, which is kind of right. It's like a pun almost. And this is another screamo band who will make your ears numb.
I was like, what is the
if
pun?
you don't.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and speaking of chosen ones, they just signed a run for cover this week. So
Yeah, so best friends forever news because Numb Ears also blew myself and all my friends away. They played at like noon or something, and 12:30, I think the first sets of the day were, and we had low expectations based on some other bands who play early in the day, and it's just I knew the name Numb Ears, and I know we've posted been on some cool tours, and you've reviewed them before, but like I don't know, sometimes you just think the screamo bands are I don't know what to expect. They just blew us away live. But still, you never know. It's like, this is a band that we think is great. I'm interested in them, but they're still a screamo band. And then like a day later, they're announced they signed to Run for Cover, which is like, oh, whoa, okay, that's some huge, exciting and validating
and specifically
news
for those who care about these types of things, is they're on an imprint of the label called I think Summer Shade, and it's run by Madison from the band Fury, who also co-books Sound and Fury, which I think is interesting.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that is interesting and cool. Other amazing sets, Marietta. Oh my! I mean, easily could have been
told you
in top 5 too. That people were going wild for Marietta. I feel like it's worth talking about Marietta a little. Can you mansplain them to me?
Sure. I do this last week.
Oh, all right, fine. You did. Never mind. I have a short memory. Go back and listen last week. Andrew predicted that Marietta would be
you asked
crazy.
me what is the one band I have to make sure not to miss, and I stereotyped you and said I'm going to pick one I think you might not realize, and I went with Marietta. So I'm glad to hear that you took my advice and that they're like tied for 10 on your top 10.
Yeah, no, and I mean they definitely one of the most epic sets. They played earlier in the day. I remember it was way more crowded for Cursive, who played later, and I was thinking like, all you people, like you missed it, but it didn't feel. But it was still a big crowd for them, but more importantly, everyone in the crowd was going crazy, singing. So many, younger people singing every single word, going crazy. They definitely had the most people crowd surfed also constantly at this fest. And I don't know, it's like a thing, especially there's a lot of old people at this fest, but like the younger side uh, of the fest were just crowd surfing nonstop. And even Jenny Lewis said during Rilo Kiley's set that she thinks that's the first time anyone ever crowd surfed to Rilo Kiley. But the most crowd surfing happened during Marietta. And the most, like, I look to my left and see people singing passionately, like, have just like the greatest thing that ever happened to them is happening right at this moment. A lot of that was happening during Marietta, and they were really fun and really good. And yeah, and this is a band who, for some more context, back in the day, released a split with Modern Baseball, who I think if they would reunite and play Best Friends Forever, yeah, they're like approaching like a title fight.
Isn't the festival like 10K capacity? I think.
Yeah, I mean, so you're saying Modern Baseball's bigger than
it would
Jimmy
be like
World?
Oh yeah, it would be like when My Chemical Romance headlined Riot Fest and it took an hour and a half to exit because of foot traffic. And I mean, it could happen. Did it happen? But it would be, I would worry that they would need to upgrade their venue if they had Modern Baseball as a headliner, in the context of it's also a festival that could draw 10,000 people without them. We'll see.
Right. Well, then it makes another way to put it maybe is Best Friends Forever can't afford Modern Baseball.
Damn.
But
Yeah.
Yes.
And my favorite fun fact to point out, though, is that the split between Modern Baseball and Marietta came out before either band was anything. They are just college friends. The split came out when you could see Modern Baseball play for like 12 people. Like, it was not like a split that happened because two bands were rising. They were friends and they both happened to rise. It is a cool thing that it happened that way. But yeah, there was like no savviness behind that pairing.
I'll keep going. Empire, amazing. I definitely want to listen to them more too. I wish I prepared even more for their set. Go see them. They only played 30 minutes. Again, my friend Joey has gotten like really into Empire ahead of this, as far as like looking into bands he missed 10 years ago and then getting excited to see them at this festival. He's now a huge Empire fan. They also have this like narrative going where they weren't going to reunite until the Lions got into the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, and the front man was wearing like a Lions jersey and Lions hat, I think. And there was a lot of like go Lions jokes happening. But yeah, but then there was like, he's in this Lions jersey. He looks like a big jock when you first see him on stage. And then he's playing like these really sad, slow emo songs.
Maybe it was the jersey, because I don't think of Jock when I think of Keith, but.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think he is. But yeah, if you're seeing him for the first time, and then between what he looked like and then the songs. But then they were great. He only played 30 minutes. I said that. So that was a little weird.
And
that was even short for this fest.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So it felt very quick. I don't know why. If it was because they probably playing longer on their tour that they did.
Yeah. I probably would imagine that they're doing, full length sets at their headlining shows.
And so, all right, quickly, Jawbreaker, amazing as always. Just what else can I say? Jawbreaker, Awake But Still in Bed, who are especially a favorite of yours, and like their album from last year was probably like top 10.
Yeah, maybe 2023, I think. But yeah, either way.
Oh wow, it's been that long already.
Maybe it was last year. But anyway, yeah, great band. One of the best newer bands on the fest, and not set wise, just like band wise.
One fun kind of Best Friends Forever lore at this point is, yes, last year Shannon sang on stage with Home Is Where. And so then we also noticed her side stage all 3 days. We noticed her everywhere, being a huge fan. And then this year they actually got to play. And she did say on stage, "We can't believe we're here. Last year, this was the most amazing fest." And then sure enough, like for the rest of the fest this year, we saw Shannon side stage, like freaking out for Empire and whoever else. So, Awake But Still in Bed, I feel like honorary Best Friends Forever house band a little bit. And there's some other house bands though. Jay Robbins played second year in a row. Last year Jawbox, this year Burning Airlines. We got the first Hey Mercedes set in 8 years at this festival. Not like my thing. They were good, huge crowd. People were excited. And of course, that is members of Braid who played last year. So another house band. Bob actually joked on stage. He said, "Who wants to start a band with me so that I can have an excuse to play this fest again next year?"
Oh, come
I
on.
love it
He's
so
got like
much.
3 other bands already.
So yeah, maybe figure out which
Yeah,
one of
maybe
those
we'll
is
get
coming
like
back
City
next.
on Film at Best Friends Forever 2026.
Superchunk, just great. So just crowd pleasing, amazing set. Go see Superchunk live. Don't take them for granted, I would say. And Snowing, another fave of yours. Yes, great. They also joined Bear vs. Shark on stage for their last song. They had just toured together, so I'm sure they were doing that on tour, and they recreated that for this fest. And lastly, I want to shout out These Arms Are Snakes, who, for a band who go as wild and crazy as they do, similar to Bear vs. Shark, they really made an effort. Well, especially the front man. He was in the crowd constantly. And I have memories of them from 15, 20 years ago of him sprawled out on the floor at shows. And as far as a band who's like still doing that, they are. And of course, super tight live. They were another highlight. All right, I'll stop there. Unless you have any questions.
So your top 10 is like the entire lineup, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I really wish I was there. It sounds like it was a blast, but I will be in Vegas this weekend for the other emo festival, When We Were Young.
Yes. And you will not be able to say that the
No.
entire lineup is your highlight because you are going to be busy interviewing bands backstage.
Yes, I am going to be Brooklyn Vegan's When We Were Young correspondent this weekend. I'm going to be conducting interviews with bands backstage. They will be streaming live on Veeps, which is the official backstage partner of When We Were Young. And we're going to have clips up on the Brooklyn Vegan Instagram too and our other social media. So tune in with us live this weekend from Vegas.
With where hopefully you'll be enjoying a lot of Slurpees.
Yeah, When We Were Young is presented by 7-Eleven this year. So hopefully I'll get a big gulp while I'm
some late night pizzas.
Yeah, the what is it? The taquitos, the taco rolls. Those are that's kind of my 7-Eleven guilty pleasure.
So yeah, I don't know how many bands you're going to get to see because you're going to be backstage interviewing them, but who are you like hoping that you will get to see the most?
Yeah, so we did a list of, or I did a list of 10 bands we're excited to see When We Were Young. It's on BrooklynVegan.com. And if you are attending the festival, there's over 50 bands playing. So, and there's a lot of overlap. So, it is definitely the fest that you have to make some tough decisions at. So I do recommend that you check out my list if you are trying to figure out who to see. But on the list is in alphabetical order, Alexis on Fire, Arm's Length, Bad Religion, Destroy Boys, Drain, The Gaslight Anthem, Knocked Loose, The Starting Line, Straylight Run, and Tsunami.
I am not going, but Alexis on Fire is actually the band I want to see the most because Andrew and I worked on a magazine that we wrote just about Alexis on Fire. It's actually for sale in our shop. Go buy it. There's tons of good writing in there. And also along with like Alexis on Fire vinyl variants and stuff. Anyway, it's a project we're really proud of. We did it a couple years ago. Alexis on Fire I don't think they've ever come to New York since then.
No, not since then. I know they played like Terminal 5, I think 2 or 3 nights when they first reunited. But yeah, I think they did a
there's no
full
way.
Tour. Okay, either way, we haven't seen him.
Not
Whether it happened or not, we definitely haven't seen him since then. But yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I got really obsessed with them while we were writing that. I just got so deep, and they're on my list, high on my list of bands I need to see. But I unfortunately won't be there.
Yeah, I mean, we lived with their music and their story for so long. It's an 80-page magazine. It tells their whole story. I have listened to all of their albums so many times throughout that process. So yeah. And also just like, even if we didn't write a magazine about them, I've never seen Alexis on Fire. And I mean, I think they're one of the most interesting bands of that era. and they have a new album. It's like, I think, there's a whole sort of narrative that when we were young, it's right there in the name, is like this nostalgia festival. So I I think there's nothing wrong with that, but I think I take a liking to the bands who are not just there for nostalgia reasons. So I think that's why both Alexis on Fire and The Starting Line are on my top 10, because they are these bands that have these nostalgia inducing records from the early 2000s, but they also both have recent out. Starting Line's album, their first in 18 years, came out this year. And both of those records are like really bands that still have something to say, not just resting on laurels, really trying to move forward. So I look forward to seeing, if I mean, hopefully I get the chance. In the context, especially at this festival, I want to see the bands that are still doing something today that is just as important as what they were doing 20 years ago. On that note, there's not that many newer bands, but the ones that I am really excited about, like Arm's Length, Destroy Boys, Drain, Tsunami, Knocked Loose, I guess even would count in the context of this festival as a newer band. Yeah, I'm really excited to see like those. I mean, I think Arm's Length in particular, with the festival has a lot of different stuff this year. There's definitely, and we'll talk about this in a second, there's more metalcore than the last few years of the fest, but it's pretty split between like late 90s, early 2000s pop punk and emo. And I think Arm's Length, more so than a lot of the other newer bands on the fest, really carry the torch for that really well. I mean, they just toured this year with Thursday and Silverstein. They work perfect on that tour. I think they're the band that if you are checked out of the emo scene and you're here because you grew up on this stuff and you just want to sing along to your old favorite songs, get there at 11:50 in the morning to see Arm's Length, because they could be your new favorite band.
They're also a band who could be on When We Were Young this year and Best Friends Forever next year, which there's not a ton of bands that would do both. But here's a funny story actually from Best Friends Forever. This year, another reunion that I did not mention earlier was Pretty Girls Make Graves. We got the chance to see them at Best Friends Forever, and they actually couldn't play Best Friends Forever last year because they were on When We Were Young. I think that may have even been how the world found out they were reunited, the When We Were Young lineup announcement last year, and I could be wrong, but
it sounds right. Yeah.
It was and it was like a slightly weird one, because it was like, wait, they're back and they're on this? Not that they totally didn't fit. But anyway, and then they share members, or at least a member, with Murder City Devils, who did play Best Friends Forever last year. So like he at least was on both fests. But they said that when we were young, the schedule's so tight and, like you said, overlapping sets. They actually have a stage that spins in a circle. So I think the band who's playing in the front of it is playing, and the band who's going to play next is already ready in the back. So then they spin around and they're like there and they can play. So, it's also possible that those stages face crowds. Like, so they were on a stage. They said they were set up ready to play, and they're standing on the stage and they're looking in the direction they were looking. They're seeing like a million people. And then it was like, okay, it's our chance. Their stage spins around and they get ready and they play the first note. And they said there was like literally one person watching them or something. And they actually made the joke that it was the one person who cheered and said they saw them last year at Best Friends Forever. And then the point of the story was also to say, wow, it's really nice to be playing to a lot of people in Vegas this year. Instead, they got received much better.
It's definitely tough to be on these emo nostalgia festivals and not be the exact thing that the festival is. When I think it was when I went to that 2019 like 25th anniversary of Warped Tour, where Quicksand played against, I want to say, The Used, and the smallest Quicksand crowd I've ever seen. Anyway, Arm's Length also notably, like Alexis on Fire, are Canadian. Very important detail.
They both start with A.
Yeah, right. They're back to back on my list because of the alphabet, but also because Canada comes first on this list. I mean, I don't know. Bad Religion, I think, is a really interesting band because they were 20 years into their career when the era that this festival celebrates was happening. And now they're like 40 years into their career, but they're probably the only band from the early 80s hardcore scene who also were releasing some of their best and most loved records in the early 2000s. So I think it's awesome to see. And Bad Religion remain one of the best punk bands in the world, one of the best live shows you can see.
Were you surprised to see them on the When We Were Young lineup?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised, but I would say, again, like the festival feels like, I feel like the bread and butter of When We Were Young is like the Victory Records, Drive Through Records, early 2000s pop punk emo stuff. So to see like Bad Religion, the Gaslight Anthem, even to some extent the Offspring, like it feels like there's a little bit more like the kind of like punk rock, so to speak, this year than not just the kind of like the stuff that's a little bit more gritty and a little bit less bubblegummy.
Yeah, there's also a fest in Vegas called Punk Rock Bowling.
Yeah, right.
All three of them.
Right. They got a little bit more punk rock bowling on this lineup. We'll say that's a good way to put it to keep it Vegas. And yeah, this year has more so than any other year When We Were Young, a lot of metalcore, and I mean that makes sense. Like Warped Tour also got very metalcore in its later years. I think the band that we're most excited about in that sense, in that realm, is Knocked Loose. And the really interesting thing to me about Knocked Loose placement on this festival is they're the only heavy band who are playing one of the two main stages. And that makes sense because this is a band that we've just seen on the Grammys and late night TV and Coachella. And I think they're playing, wait, are they playing Coachella or they're playing Primavera Sound next year? But they've played Coachella recently. And Slipknot's arena tour, where they were a very, very rare band to put on an opening set at an arena tour for a legacy act and actually kill it doing so. And not that, like, not just play well, but like the crowd was into it. It goes down in my mind as a very notable experience because when I see bands I like open arena tours, usually I am one of few people who care.
So the question is, are Knocked Loose and Drain, who just got added, and Tsunami, who's also on your list, are those three hardcore / metal leaning bands on this festival because they are like kind of almost good fits for this festival, or because pretty much every festival from Coachella to When We Were Young to whatever are booking those kind of, we always use the word token hardcore bands.
I think it's the former.
But it doesn't hurt that's kind of like the in.
But there's also, I mean, there's metalcore bands in this fest that we're not even naming that are bigger than all those bands.
Oh, yeah. But are those bands getting on Coachella?
But in this context, when you're putting on like a Hot Topic revival festival, it's different.
Sure.
And then I have to give a shout out to Stray Light Run, who is one of the rarest sets on this festival. It's, I guess like half the band is also in Taking Back Sunday. Taking Back Sunday plays constantly. Probably one of the bands you are most likely to see on any punk festival, be it Riot Fest or When We Were Young, or honestly, I won't be surprised if Best Friends Forever were to book Taking Back Sunday, maybe like doing a Tell All Your Friends set or something. But I feel like I've seen Taking Back Sunday and Jimmy Eat World the most of any band in this world, just by being at festivals. But Stray Light Run have only played in the past 15 years. They played 4 times when they opened Taking Back Sunday's 2021 holiday shows, which were 4 nights. So this is their first show in 4 years, and it's only their 5th show in the last 15 years. And Stray Light Run are incredible. They are definitely not just a side project or anything like that. They're also playing a late night show with Taking Back Sunday. So when I say first show, they're playing 3 times this weekend in Vegas. The late night show with Taking Back Sunday, and then both days of When We Were Young, because it is the same lineup both days. So yeah, I implore you, if you are going, to not miss Stray Light Run. They're on at 1:55 p.m. Not too early, not as early as arm's length. But yeah, I think...
well, I hope next week we can hear how they were.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, I got 3 chances while I'm in Vegas. So, I do have to say, because you mentioned Tsunami have the non-enviable position of playing against the headliner, which is Panic at the Disco, performing A Fever You Can't Sweat Out in full. That's interesting. It is. I mean, it's definitely the most polar opposite to Panic at the Disco that you can probably think of. So I can definitely see the type of I can see like the Panic hater crowd being like, yeah, we're gonna go see like the crazy Machi hardcore band. Some people like me will be torn and will be like, I'm lucky I'll be at both days so I can see one each day. I would like to see Panic at the Disco perform that record. I mean, we did a look back on it for its 20th anniversary this year on BV. Stereo Gum did a look back on it. It definitely seems like it's being sort of looked at a little bit nicer these days than it was when, say, Pitchfork gave it a 1.5 when it came out, if I remember correct. Something horribly low like that. Yeah, that is, I think that's really an interesting kind of that you can pick Panic at the Disco performing their most popular record or one of the craziest current metallic hardcore bands around. It's a fun sociological experiment, I guess.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know how big Tsunami's crowd was for sure.
Yeah, I do feel like, again, because there is a sizable metalcore element and Panic at the Disco have their haters.
It's good that there's that other track.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be, it won't be as tough as when Marky Ramone's Blitzkrieg played against My Chemical Romance at Riot Fest, which I think, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, another band you mentioned earlier who have probably shared bills with Knocked Loose, Tsunami, and Drain. Their album Military Gun is out this week along with some other stuff. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, we're definitely very deep into this lengthy episode, so I'll just try to get to the end here, I think. But yeah, again, full circle. If you're excited about the Sugar reunion, you check out the Military Gun record. If you're excited about the Military Gun record, you check out the Sugar reunion. It's called God Save the Gun, and my elevator pitch is Military Gun are no stranger to Weezer comparisons. This is their Pinkerton, I think. My review on Brooklyn Vegan has more. I'm going to leave it at that. There's
Weezer also playing
when we were young. And Good Luck's first album in 14 years is not to miss. It's called Big Dreams, Mister. I've hyped it a few times on this show. I think as far as important bands that didn't quite get their due go, this one is really, really up there for the last 20 years or so. When they existed in the late 2000s and early 2010s, it was like they were like sort of in between emo revival, folk punk, power pop, and indie rock. And really just like an easier way to put it is just like they're a DIY band. Like they were in whatever DIY rock scene would have them, and their music is just as versatile as like you can listen to them and hear them as an emo band. You can hear them as a power pop band. Like if you've never heard them before, I would even say recommend it if you like anything from Superchunk to the New Pornographers to Hop Along to Algernon Cadwalder. Algernon's guitar player produced the record. Jeff Rosenstock, who is also very close with the band, wrote their bio, and he actually said in it that it's the type of reunion record like Superchunk's Majesty Shredding, which is like such a naturally good album that you don't even think about it like a reunion album. That's this one. Sudan Archive's new album, the BPM, as the title implies, she's in dance floor mode on this one. She's like one of the most ambitious R&B artists in the past few years, probably influenced by D'Angelo, I would have to imagine. And this record is her danciest. It's like the Renaissance to her Lemonade, I guess. The Last Dinner Party sophomore album from The Pyre is out. I'm a fan of it. Their last record, I guess they kind of sound like Sparks and Kate Bush updated for Gen Z, and they've covered both of those artists. And it's like the last record was done with James Ford, who also produced a lot of Arctic Monkeys. They definitely kind of have some of that post AM Arctic Monkeys, like slick modern rock production. But then just so musically like in the 80s art pop realm. It's really interesting stuff. 2 albums out this week that are like country, but with a little bit of indie rock in there. Joshua Ray Walker's Stuff and Mariel Buckley's Strange Trip Ahead. It's a good week for stuff in the overall hardcore realm. We were talking about Elliot earlier, right? Putting on one of your second favorite set at Best Friends Forever. So heads up, Elliot singer Chris Higdon has a new band called Mirrorless, and their self-titled debut EP is out this week on Equal Vision. It's basically a supergroup with a Louisville supergroup with members of Coliseum, By the Grace of God, and Black God, and like other bands in that.
No Knocked Loose?
What?
No Knocked Loose?
Yeah, no Knocked Loose though. Old school Louisville, pre Knocked Loose Louisville. But it's like, picture Chris from Elliott doing like Hot Water Music, Planes Mistaken for Stars kind of stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
It's really good. Spaced, the Buffalo hardcore band, they're on Pure Noise now. Their debut EP for Pure Noise, No Escape, is out. It's really cool. It's both their catchiest, most melodic work yet, but also
I saw Spaced open for Militarie Gun.
Yeah, there you go. Everything comes full circle. It's very political. It's still aggressive. It's really good. Moving into hardcore adjacent death metal, the new Tribal Gaze record is out, Inveighing Brilliance. I just really like the Texas metal hardcore crossover scene. Tribal Gaze are in that scene, and there's
Taylor Young.
Yeah, Taylor Young produced it. It's on Nuclear Blast now, so they're like a bit bigger. They've been touring with bands like the Acacia Strain and Cattle Decapitation, so they're in the big leagues now, so to speak, but they still sound the same, which is cool. And Destiny Bond, which honestly might be one of my favorite hardcore records in a minute. And I think a huge step up from their debut, which a lot of people did, which I also like, but like, I think that they got some hype on that debut, and I'm kind of predicting they'll get even more so this time. It's like, it's kind of something that you don't hear enough of or a lot of these days, but it's kind of got that hard rock infused hardcore vibe. Like, think like early Fucked Up, The Bronx, Every Time I Die, like somewhere in that realm. Really, really good. And then the lyrics are like, there's a lot of, just like queer and trans, like resilience and pride and survival and love. I mean, the album's called The Love. So really powerful themes set to some party friendly, hard rock infused hardcore. It's a really good record. This is a big week for albums. I mean, that's 10. I review those notable releases. The Tame Impala album is out this week, which we have the only available cassette release of in our Brooklyn Vegan shop.
Which we used to have the only available cassette. All 1,000 are now sold out.
Oh, okay. My mistake. Sorry, you can't buy it. You'll have to go. We don't encourage flipping. But Tame Impala's new album is out. And there's a bunch of albums out that Bill reviews in Bill's Indie Basement. His favorite album of the week is the new Bar Italia. He says it's a big step up for them. He says it's some of their most immediate, satisfying, hook-filled stuff. And then he also talks about the new records from Soulwax. It's their first in 7 years. Living Hour, which he says is a cozy, comforting shoegaze indie rock record from Winnipeg. More Canada love on this episode. He reviews the new Jane Inc., which is a collaborator of US Girls, the new record from The Bats, the New Zealand indie legends, and Mozart Estate, which is another, it's Lawrence from Felt. One of his many monikers is Mozart Estate. So, I mean, absolute legend of indie music. So very cool to see more stuff from Lawrence. There's also just like tons of songs out this week. We talked about the Numb Ears track earlier because of the Best Friends Forever connection. Also BFF related is that Evan from Marietta launched his new solo project Homestar. And the new single is called The Middle. It's nothing to do with Jimmy Eat World, but
yet it is. I don't know. How do you
call your project Homestar? I mean, I just keep thinking of Homestar Runner. Like, I'm like, it just feels like it's too quick of an association to something else. No disrespect, Evan. Nothing but love for you. This song is cool. Marietta, like you said, you saw people going crazy to their like very Midwest emo, noodly, mathy stuff. This song is like more like Weezer. So it fits well with Militarie Gun, I guess. Man, what else? So much this week. Courtney Barnett put out her first non-instrumental song in 4 years, and it feels like longer than that. I don't know. I just feel like she was everywhere, and then she wasn't. But this song is called Stay in Your Lane. It just feels like classic Courtney Barnett. It feels like Courtney Barnett is back. It's like a real ripper.
Which I think just last week she was on the Rolling Stone's 250 best songs of the century too, which was a cool look.
There you go. I mean, great timing for her. If yeah,
Yeah.
we got the first taste of an album that I know you and I are both really excited for, which is Armand Hammer and the Alchemist's new record, Mercy. It's their second album together. It's also Billy Woods of Armand Hammer's second album of this year, because his solo record Gollywog is like one of my favorite albums this year. The song is called Super Nintendo. It is predictably awesome. Another artist that like we've all been obsessed with is This Is Lorelei, who last year put out his first proper album, Box for Buddy, Box for Star. Though it is his first proper album, it follows like a decade of just these like random Bandcamp, like self-recorded kind of stuff, like just like absolute huge back catalog of just like lo-fi home stuff. And he's picked 10 of those songs and re-recorded them with proper studio recording for this new record, Hollow Boy. The first single is the super catchy kind of pop punky song called Name the Band,
which I wonder if he played when he opened for Grizzly Bear like 2 nights ago, which I'm so sad I could not make it to.
Oh yeah.
I hope by the next episode I can tell you how Grizzly Bear were, because there's still, that run of shows is not over, and I'm trying to make it to one of them. But This Is Lorelei only opened one of them, which of course was my number one choice, but couldn't do.
Well, luckily you have had no lack of chances to see This Lorelei, and I imagine I think he's played New York like 3, 4, or 5 times. He lives here, but like, like he's gonna. I think you're still in the point in his career where you're gonna get more and more local shows. He hasn't like.
Well, he announced Music Hall of Williamsburg, his biggest show yet, as This Is Lorelei.
Definitely starting to really rise up, but I'm hoping we can still keep him in our local scene for a little bit longer. And a few more songs before we head out is Jenny Hollingsworth from Let's Eat Grandma announced her debut solo record this week. It's under the name Jenny on Holiday. It's called Quicksand Heart, and 2 songs are out. She already released a song called Every Ounce of Me, and now she put out a song called Dolphins. Super good. Definitely more of like a lighter indie pop vibe than Let's Eat Grandma. And according to Stereo Gum, the other member of Let's Eat Grandma, Rosa Walton, has a solo project in the works too, although the band is not broken up or anything, so no fear there. Glitterer, aka the band led by Ned Rustin from Title Fight, announced their new album, which I guess is sort of Glitterer. And it comes out in November on the band's own label. They're playing Coachella next year. They just announced a tour. The song is called Stainless Steel, the first single. It's really good. It's grungy. It sort of is like this, kind of uses stainless steel as a metaphor for like sort of like the hopelessness and dread of current society. I mean, Ned is just, one of our generation's great songwriters. And I like this one a lot. Lyrically, musically, it's good stuff. Last but definitely not least, in 2023, we got the first album in 3 decades from shoegaze veterans Drop 19s. And we're not going to have to wait another 3 decades, because they revealed today that a new album is coming, and they put out the song Fools from it, and it's super good. It's I just think it's so cool to see all these shoegaze legends from back in the day making music that really just sounds so fresh. I mean, I think it's the combination of all the new stuff sounds 90s anyway, but I don't know. There's a certain touch that Drop 19s and Slow Dive and My Bloody Valentine and some of these veteran bands have, where it just sounds as fresh as the new bands, and this song does that for me. So yeah, like I said, a lot of new music this week. 2 big music festivals in Vegas. Sugar is back. What else happened, Dave?
Peaches has announced her first album in 10 years, No Lube So Rude, due out in 2026. First single, Not in Your Mouth, None of Your Business, is out now, and Peaches will tour in 2026, including One Leg with model actress. I feel like a good match, let's just say.
Perfect pairing,
yeah. One Leg with model actress and one with Cortissa Starr. 3 members of the Blood Brothers have formed a new band, Evil Island, which also features Autry Albright II, Autry Fulbright II, formerly of Trail of Dead and Off. I expect to see that band on the lineup of Best Friends Forever next year. Mitski just released a live album, which accompanies her soon-to-be-released live film, Mitski: The Land, and the album is currently available as a name-your-price download on Bandcamp, with proceeds going to healthcare organization Direct Relief. And last but not least, Daft Punk now have their own action figures, and they also just announced a new Human After All Remixes album in honor of that album's 20th anniversary, including remixes from Soulwax, Sebastian, Digitalism, Basement Jaxx, Juan McLean, and wait, I'm pretty sure, and Peaches, who we just said is announced a bunch of stuff. You can actually pick up that Human After All Remixes 2LP set and the new Daft Punk action figure set in the shop.brooklynvegan.com. And I think that's it for this week.
Thanks for tuning in. Dave and I will be back every Friday morning with new episodes of BV Weekly. And in between the episodes, you can always get much more from us at brooklynvegan.com, on all of our social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You can pick up records from us at shop.brooklynvegan.com. And if you like what you hear, tell your friends about us, subscribe to the show, give us a good rating. All that little stuff goes a really long way. It really helps us a lot, and we really appreciate it. So until then, thank you again, and see you next time.